everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the Friday race of the day. It is race 9 at Gulfstream Park. This an optional claimer, 75,000 first level allowance for the 3-year-old fillies, going the 1.16 distance on the turf course. Before we get into the handicapping, with this being the race of the day, do note you can head on over to the race of the day page on DRF.com and get free all access past performances, formulator, Timeform US PPs for this race to handicap along with us. Mike, we've got a field of 9 runners signed on for this one, and haven't seen the morning line yet. Personally, I wouldn't want to make a morning line for this race. Not exactly sure where the bettors are going to land. We've got a couple of runners from the Mark Casse stable, a couple from the Brendan Walsh barn, and they all look like contenders in this spot.
Yeah, you're right. This is just a wide open race. I thought it was a really interesting one to go through from top to bottom, because I do think there were cases to be made for a lot of different horses. Trips will be very, very important in here.
Speaking of trips, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. I think what you're alluding to, Mike, is there doesn't appear to be that much early speed in here. And some of these horses that want to be closing from the back are going to have to figure out a way to work out a successful journey, because even when you see the horses that are shown on the front end, they're not exactly need the lead confirmed front running types. I mean, the number 4 Lush Lips did stalk the pace in her synthetic victory last time. And the number 6 Mom's Martini has never been on the lead, but she is stretching out in distance. So it's a little bit murky as to who is actually going to wind up setting the pace in this spot.
Yeah, pace is very, very, very difficult to decipher. We'll see if it does, fall to the 4 Lush Lips, who did show pretty good speed on a different surface last time before she just sort of settled in to stalk the leader, and then obviously wound up blowing that field up through the stretch. But based on what she had done prior to that on this surface, she's going to have to improve to beat this field.
Let's go through this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1 Designer Bag. This horse has not run particularly fast in her first couple of starts, Mike, and we'll take a look at the replay of her maiden victory last time out. This is the second start of her career. But I will say, when I went back to watch both of her replays, she's run a little better than the results might suggest each time. I mean, she got completely steadied out at the start on her debut and made a good run to get the lead in mid-stretch that day before finishing second. And then in this race, I mean, she started to get reined in coming out of the starting gate, got really rank for a few strides under her jockey before settling, and then made this big run to get the job done. I don't think she's been facing that much, and this is a big step up in class, but she might be a little better than she looks.
I agree. I tried to get her in there somewhere. I couldn't ultimately get to her like in a really high place in here, because I do think it's a good field, but I saw all the same things that you saw, David. Her debut was good. She really improved, I thought, last time. That was a really nice performance. I know it didn't come back with any kind of a figure. I thought that was a really strong performance. She's drawing the rail now. She's got Lasix. Rosario's going to take over. I don't think that's any big deal, even though she loses IRAD. Source is going to be a big price in here. I think she's pretty interesting.
Number 2 is Flip Flops, one of 2 Mark Casse entrants in this race. And I thought she ran pretty well to break her maiden at Ellis Park over the summer. Never really care too much about those speed figures for the turf races at Ellis Park. Horses generally improve a lot out of those races that they run in the summer of their 2-year-old seasons. And, she didn't run so well at Kentucky Downs, but again, I'm not going to hold a performance at that track against her. But if you just kind of focus in on her last race at Keatland, I think you can make a pretty good case for this horse, because she was towards the back early. There wasn't a whole lot of pace going on that day. The runner-up, who was a big price, had things her own way on the front end and still almost pulled off the upset. And Flip Flops had some traffic in upper stretch, was staying on pretty well at the end. Now she comes off a little bit of a freshening, gets Lasix for the first time. The only thing not to like is the fact that she doesn't have any early speed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We were sort of alluding to trips earlier, and the fact that maybe there's not a lot of pace, and it's pretty clear that she's going to need to work out a better trip this time if she's going to be effective. But listen, man, I remember really liking her maiden win the first time they stretched her. I thought she looked really good winning that race. Like you, the $1 million race in Kentucky Downs means nothing to me. And then like going back to watch that Keatland race, I mean, you cannot ride a horse the way that she was ridden and expect to be anywhere at the end. And she was still passing horses late. To me, when I go back and watch that race, and obviously you guys have access to the replay with your free formulator PPs. You can go back and watch and draw your own conclusions about it. I thought she got a terrible ride last time.
And I've watched some of her workouts coming into this race, and she seems to be thriving coming in here. She actually outworked a horse that we talked about in the Wednesday race of the day. You can also see us mentioned on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel, Patriotic War, who could be one of the favorites in there. The number 3 is Ramsey Pond, a horse who's a little tough to get a read on because she's got this huge effort breaking her maiden at Kentucky Downs, a 78 buyer that kind of towers over this field. And you go back to watch the replay of that race, and she was very visually impressive in victory. But Saffie Joseph does seem like a trainer who tends to get horses to produce efforts at Kentucky Downs that maybe aren't always replicated elsewhere. And she came back and was disappointed against the favorite next time in the Our Dear Peg. I did think she got back to a much better effort last time in the wait a while, kept good company that day. The winner and the runner-up, Savetta and Winning Streep, they both came back to finish 3rd and 4th against a tougher field in the Ginger Brew last weekend. And Ramsey Pond was staying on pretty well after attacking the pace on the far turn. I still don't totally trust her to run her A race here, but at least she has shown some tactical speed on occasion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought she was maybe a tough call in here, but I can't give her too much credit for the Kentucky Downs win. I thought she ran pretty poorly 2 starts back in the Our Dear Peg. Maybe there's some kind of excuse for that, David, but I just thought she ran poorly that day as the favorite. And she did run better last time, but it was the kind of race to me where I felt like she had an overall good trip. She was in contention before the 1-2 finishers just sort of ran right by her as that field came into the stretch. And then she was running again at the end when that race was already over.
The number 4 is Lush Lips, and she is coming off a visually impressive score. The only problem is it's on synthetic, and this race is on turf, and we'll see if she can translate this form back over to the grass because she just absolutely smashed this field. I mean, you mentioned, Mike, that she got an aggressive ride away from the gate. I think they had to be somewhat aggressive because she was drawn all the way out in post 11, and they wanted to get over towards the inside that day. She did, got a good stalking trip from there, and once Edgard Zayas asked her to go, she just put this field away quite easily. Not beating much, stepping way up in class here, but she did handle the turf at least once over in Ireland. So there is some hope that she can translate that form back to the surface. And if she does, she's a contender.
Yeah, she's a wild card in here, if nothing else, because she did look good winning last time on a different surface. And then you go back to her North American debut there, 2 starts back, and all right, she didn't run well. It was at Kentucky Downs. I mean, who cares? Those are the easiest kinds of races not to hold against horses, especially when you consider that she had run well on turf prior to that over in Ireland. So it's a real wild card in here.
The number 5 is Sashay Away, a horse who's had plenty of experience around 2 turns on the turf. She won her debut at Ellis Park and just tried tougher company thereafter. 2 stakes races that were both won by Mayday Ready, who proved her quality, finishing 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf at the end of the year. Going back to watch the Jessamine 2-back, she was just never in the most comfortable spot, trying to rally up a very tight hole along the inside, and got up in there but couldn't really finish off the race, but was still with a blanket finish for 4th against some better horses than she's meeting here. And then last time out at Churchill Downs, just kind of lost the race coming out of the starting gate. I mean, she broke with the field, but then as they were converging down towards the inside, she got sawed off in traffic and found herself at the back of the pack, which was not the place to be in a race that was totally dominated on the front end. Mike, it's hard to ignore the trainer switch. I mean, switching from Robbie Medina, who does okay, but I mean, doesn't win at the percentage that Brendan Walsh does. And you just have to regard this as an upgrade.
Yeah, I agree. This is a dangerous horse in here because I'm with you on all the things that you said about her most recent start in particular, where you just don't want to be too hard on her after the early trouble. Ran fine in the 2 stakes races. I thought both of them just sort of spending a lot of time racing in and among horses, not necessarily getting a clean trip. She's another one. I still remember that debut at Ellis Park where she got a great trip in that race, but she showed real acceleration in the stretch there, took over, and I liked the way she finished that race off.
The number 6 is Mom's Martini. And one thing that's different about her than a lot of the horses we just talked about is at least she has some tactical speed and she figures to be somewhat forward in here, especially stretching out from a 5-furlong turf race last time. That was her turf debut at Gulfstream over that shorter distance. And she ran okay behind Personify, who's until now undefeated Marcassi trainee, who appears to have some quality, but never really looked like she was a threat to that horse or a threat to really win the race. Staying on at the end. She did try a mile once on the dirt, didn't really finish that day. Maybe it'll be a different story on the turf, but she's going to have to improve.
Yeah, gonna have to find a way to just to run a better race here. And listen, she earned a top figure on turf last time, but it's a 5 furlong race, and like you said, it never looked like she was gonna win there. This is just one of those races where I feel like there are a lot of different horses I wanted to make cases for, and Mom's Martini wasn't one of them.
The number 7 is Origami, who is coming out of one of the faster speed figures on the turf when she got a 70 buyer last time in the Cecil B. DeMille, a grade 3 event against the males out in Southern California at Del Mar. And that was a race that didn't feature a whole lot of pace. She was just sort of picking up pieces at the end to get up for third. I went back to watch that race and was hoping to see her just pick it up a little bit more through the lane. She just barely got up for third at the end, but you look through the field and she was facing some better rivals. And there, the runner-up Scipio came back to break his maiden next time, getting a 76 buyer. So you know that she was meeting some foes of quality. I couldn't read too much into her European form. I thought she got a great trip when she broke her maiden over in Ireland. She's a little tough for me to peg, but she does appear to be spotted well here.
Yeah, I agree. I actually liked her maiden win over in Orlando, just for the fact that she spent, a lot of that race down on the rail, then angled out in the stretch and just came and got the horse that was on the lead. I thought that was a pretty nice performance. I thought she had enough of an excuse. They reeled her back on a week's rest there in her next start. And she had an excuse that day when she broke very, very poorly and then could only chase what looked like a legitimate pace to me. I want to give her a little extra credit for that race out at Del Mar, David. I mean, they were walking on the lead in that race, and she's just sort of sitting on the rail behind horses all the way to the stretch. Even the runner-up Scipio, who was last, at least he got to the outside around the final turn and started to make a move to try to get within range, while this horse was just sitting buried behind horses. I don't know, man. I'm going to give her a pass for that last one. I think she's pretty dangerous in here.
The number 8 is the other Mark Casse trainee in the race, Cheese, who just broke her maiden last time against fellow Florida breds. Now stepping up into open company. It did take her 5 starts to get that initial victory. I will say she kind of found another gear, but it never looked like she was getting there last time to beat Designer Bag. But that rival had some trouble early in the race, whereas she did not. So Cheese did at least take a bit of a step forward there, but clearly she'd have to improve again considerably to be competitive at this level.
Right. Wanted to give her at least a little extra credit for the win last time because she did get herself into a pretty bad spot there at the top of the stretch. And it just kind of felt like she lost all chance, but she still managed to, sort of find a game finish to get up. But I think it's pretty clear she's going to have to run better than that against this field.
Maybe a horse that can shake up this pace scenario a little bit is the number 9 Carpe Diem, because you watch her races over in France and she has been relatively close up to the pace each time. It didn't seem like they were going that fast up front, and that's typically the case in those French races. They just crawl and sprint home. So you never know if that speed, in quotation marks, is going to translate to American speed in a turf race. But watching her races, Mike, I didn't dislike what I saw. I mean, she seemed to travel very comfortably, racing towards the front end. She dug in gamely to get the job done last time. It did feel like a race that was totally dominated towards the front end, and there was no closing going on. So we'll see how that form translates here as she makes her first U.S. start for trainer Grab Motion, who over the years has had plenty of success with horses like this.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good move for him. We'll see if he's got another one here. I'm sort of with you though. I mean, the last race, just a race that was really slow early and then fast late, but she just sort of sat outside the horse to finish second and managed to gun her down late. I really didn't like her race two back all that much, David. I mean, she's just absolutely loose in there on a pretty slow pace. And they just ran right by her to stretch the winner. Did.
Let's throw up our picks for this allowance event on Friday at Gulfstream Park. And, Mike, you're going to land on the number 2 flip flops. And I think something we've got to reconcile with each of the horses we put on top is just how they're going to work out trips in a race that doesn't appear to feature a lot of pace for them.
Yeah, I'm worried about what will happen here for flip flops early in this race, but I do think she was pretty badly compromised in her most recent start, and just going back to the maiden win, it's not like she was way out of it that day. I like that she got herself sort of in the mid pack there, and then moved when it was time. I feel like maybe if she pulls the right trip here, she's one of the fillies in here who she's just a little bit better than she looks on paper.
Yeah, I agree with you on flip-flops. I think she's going to run well in here. I put the number 5 Sachet away on top, just a horse who has not gotten ideal trips in the last couple of starts, but she is another one. Even with this trainer switch to Brendan Walsh, we'll see how much more speed she can gain, but one that's going to have to work out a trip in a race that doesn't appear like it features a whole lot of pace for her to close into. That being the Friday race of the day, race 9 at Gulfstream Park. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.